Welcome back. Today on the Byte-Size Brief, we're going deep on BullFrog AI Holdings, Inc. That's ticker BFRG. Now, this is a company that pretty much exploded onto everyone's radar after one absolutely wild day. So what's the story here? Yeah, you're seeing that right. On March 30th, the stock just took off. I mean, a 138% jump in a single day. That is massive. And whenever you see a move like that, you've got to ask, right? Is this the real deal, the beginning of something big, or is it just a classic speculative bubble about to pop? To figure that out, we have to look at what lit the fuse. And the fuse was a pretty big one. It was a bombshell announcement, really. They landed a commercial deal with a top 5 global pharma company. Now, they didn't name names, but that's a huge stamp of approval. The deal is all about using BullFrog's AI to tackle major depressive disorder, or MDD, and that's a market worth over $8 billion. You know, for a small company like this, that is the dream validation. But as always, the headline only tells part of the story. We need to dig a little deeper. All right, so what is BullFrog AI really doing? I mean, how does a tiny company grab the attention of a legit pharmaceutical giant? Well, it all comes down to their core tech. So this is their secret sauce, the BLEP platform. At its heart, it's trying to crack one of the toughest nuts in medicine. You know how a drug can be a miracle for one person but do absolutely nothing for someone else? Well, BLEP is designed to figure that out ahead of time. It sifts through mountains of data to find the exact patients who are most likely to respond to a specific drug. The idea is to do this before a company spends a fortune on a massive clinical trial. If it works, it could save pharma companies hundreds of millions and get life-saving drugs to the right people way faster. And this is how they plan to make money with it. The business model is actually pretty clever. Think of them like a house flipper, but for drugs. They go out and find these promising drugs that have failed in late-stage trials. You know, drugs that big pharma companies have already spent a ton of money on and then just given up on. BullFrog swoop in, acquires the rights, and then puts their BFleet platform to work. They're looking for that hidden gem, that small group of patients where the drug actually does work. If they find it, they can run a new, smaller, much more targeted trial. And if that works, they turn around and sell this rescued drug back to big pharma, hopefully for a massive profit. It's the definition of a high-risk, high-reward play. Okay, so the technology sounds great, right? The business model is smart. But look, a cool idea and a great investment are two very, very different things. So now we gotta do the reality check. Let's pop the hood and take a hard look at the financials. And this is where things get a little jarring. In the last 12 months, BullFrog AI brought in a grand total of $117,000 in revenue. Just let that number sink in. $117,000. We were just talking about an $8 billion market for just one of their programs. This right here tells you everything you need to know about how incredibly early stage this company is. And while they were making that tiny amount of money, they were spending a whole lot more. In that same 12-month period, they had an operating loss of $6.6 million. That's their cash burn rate. For a company this small, that's not just a leak in the fuel tank, that's a gaping hole. Which brings us to probably the single most important number in this whole story. At the end of last year, BullFrog had just $2.3 million in cash. Okay, let's do some quick math here. If you're burning through over $6 million a year, and you only have $2.3 million in the bank, well, you don't need a calculator to see that the runway is incredibly short. We're talking less than a year, maybe even less than 6 months, before the lights go out if nothing changes. And that right there is the core dilemma for BullFrog AI. It's a classic race against the clock. This huge pharma deal, it's their lifeline, their one big hope. But the question is, can those milestone payments start rolling in fast enough to plug that hole in the fuel tank? This is what sets up the classic showdown between the bulls and the bears. So let's really get into it. Let's break down the two completely opposite stories you could tell about BullFrog AI right now. In one corner, you've got the incredible hype, the promise of game-changing tech. And in the other corner, you have the cold, hard, and frankly pretty scary reality of their financial statements. Okay, let's look at the bull case first. It's all about that big pharma deal. I mean, that's groundbreaking validation right there. It says, hey, our BFLE platform is legit. And they're not just aiming at one market. They're targeting these multi-billion-dollar opportunities in depression, brain cancer, and liver disease. So they have multiple shots on goal. But then you look at the bear case, and it's brutal. You've got that tiny revenue number versus a huge operating loss, You've got the cash crunch, which is honestly an existential threat. And on top of all that, they're not even in compliance with Nasdaq's rules. Their stock price has been under $1 for too long, and if they can't fix that, they could get delisted. That would be a massive blow. The CEO, Vin Singh, really lays out the bull case perfectly. He said, and I'm quoting here, that they are in multiple advanced conversations with global pharmaceutical organizations. So the big hope, is that this first deal isn't a one-off. It's just the first domino to fall. If more deals like this are coming, then the cash they so desperately need could be right around the corner. But man, the bear case is just as strong. And it is all about risk. First, that Nasdaq delisting threat, it is absolutely real. To try and fix their low share price, they've already gotten approval for a reverse stock split. That's where they basically glue shares together to make the price go up. Investors usually hate that. It's often seen as a sign of weakness. Then there's the dilution. They have a $10 million equity line ready to go. What's that mean for you? It means they can raise cash by printing and selling new shares, which makes your existing shares worth a smaller piece of the pie. It's a tough spot to be in. So you've got these two powerful stories pulling the stock in opposite directions. So what happens next? What are the key things you need to be watching for? Well, there are a few really important dates and events coming up that could decide which side, the bulls or the bears, is right. All right, looking ahead. Back in January, they presented some data with a partner, Ellison. We'll want to watch for any follow-up news there. More importantly, in the first half of this year, we need to see if they announce any milestone payments from that big new Pharma deal. That's the cash infusion they need, plain and simple. Then, circle your calendar for August 10th. That's the deadline they have to get their stock price back over $1 and stay on the Nasdaq. And of course, all year long, everyone's going to be listening for any whispers of another new partnership. If they land one, that could change the entire story. So when you boil it all down, it's a promising technology and a huge landmark deal, pitted against a ticking clock and a bank account that's running low. The real question isn't just, does the tech work? The question is, can it make them enough money fast enough to survive? Is this a true turnaround story in the making, or is it just a speculative bubble that's getting ready to pop? That's what the market is trying to figure out right now.